Well, Charlie, this has been a long time coming. As in, we've been trying to have the stars align and try to make this work out, and finally it has. So excited to have you on the show here and to talk the Blackhawks, hockey, and just how everything's going with this team right now. So let's start here because the Olympic break pretty much is here for them. They're going to be off from February 5th, I believe, through the 25th. Um, Tell me right now, because also the trade deadline, I was looking at the sports calendar. The trade deadline's about a month
Mm.
away as well, on March 6th, I believe. 2 o'clock our time is the deadline. Where's this team at?
Yeah, so the Blackhawks were probably one of the surprise teams of the entire NHL for the first couple months of the season, like really playing themselves into the playoff conversation. And it kind of got to a point where the playoff talk was like a half joke, but half serious because we're like, there aren't really many teams in the Western Conference that were threatening inside that wild card picture. And then Connor Bedard goes down with the injury on December 12th with the shoulder injury. And that was really unfortunate because then a few games later, Frank Nazar gets hurt. And it felt like the season kind of, I don't want to say derailed, but the momentum kind of halted there. The Hawks, it took them a few games, probably took them a couple weeks to really recollect themselves after the Connor Bedard injury and the Frank Nazar injury. And it's kind of been an uphill battle since. So the first couple months of the season was fantastic, one of the surprise teams in the NHL. And then the Hawks hit a little bit of a hiccup with some of the injuries that they dealt with, and now they're trying to power through that adversity.
As we are recording this right now, the Hawks do play the Blue Jackets tonight. Want to, of course, talk about Connor Bedard because you can't talk about the Blackhawks without talking about Connor Bedard. Just year three for him in the NHL. I got the chance to talk to him a little bit before the season. He said he had a great off season. One of the things he was working on was his speed. But obviously, you mentioned him getting hurt, kind of a crazy injury as well. I remember watching that and thinking that's like a almost like a freak accident too. But he's really, when you watch him, he's trying to get back to who he was before this injury. I believe came back January 9th, was
Mhm.
out in mid-December. And what have you seen so far from him since coming back? Because I know he has scored a goal in three straight games, has 5 points in his last four, and it seems like he's kind of finding that rhythm again. And then here we go. They're about to go on a break.
Yeah. I actually thought upon returning from the shoulder injury, those first two games against Washington and Nashville, I actually thought he was really noticeable in those games. And then the third game, it was against the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid. He goes down with the stomach bug that was ripping through the Blackhawks locker room that essentially took out like half the team and most of the coaching staff. Like it was a I've never seen that before. And Connor Bedard was one of the victims, and he desperately tried playing on that Monday night game against Edmonton, but could not go. And it was the few games after that that I felt like he wasn't quite himself. So I don't think it was less about the shoulder injury and more about that stomach bug that he was kind of working his way back from. And now we're seeing the Connor Bedard that we've been used to seeing in the majority of the first half of the season. And so he's been excellent. I mean, the transformation that he's made from year two to year three and the work that he put in over the summer, I can't remember seeing that massive of a transformation in a single off season. Like usually that's multiple off seasons where you're trying to gain weight, you're trying to gain strength, get faster. He did it in one summer where he went from kind of an afterthought to being on Team Canada's roster to like legitimately playing his way into that conversation and being among the NHL's top superstars in a span of a summer has been a remarkable turnaround, and he is legitimately a bona fide superstar in the NHL right now.
I was in Vegas for about 2.5 years before I came here to Chicago. I got the chance to cover the Vegas Golden Knights, Bruce Cassidy, and honestly just meet a lot of hockey guys. I was talking to one scout before the season started. We were talking about, of course, Connor Bedard, and one of the things we were talking about is what kind of step forward can Connor Bedard take in year three. And I'm curious to know just one off the ice. How have you seen him grow as a leader? Because if you get the chance to be around Connor Bedard, like he's pretty reserved. And then I remember when I talked to him, obviously he's still a young kid. He's not even 21. Like he can't drink. Um, but obviously he's been this hockey phenom since he was so young, and he knew it too growing up. But how have you seen him grow as a leader so far this season?
Yeah, no question. I think the first 2 years for Bedard, he put so much pressure on himself to want to live up to that number one overall pick, generational talent, next superstar, like right away. And his rookie year, he did a fantastic job. Second year, obviously his play trailed off a little bit, and that's what led to the radical transformation for his offseason training. But immediately coming into year three in training camp, I noticed that he was much looser. His shoulders drooped down a little bit, just kind of enjoying the process a little bit more. And you're seeing him let his hair down a little bit, where he is starting to show his personality a lot more. And maybe part of it is the confidence that he has in the work that he put in over the summer. But I also think it's just a different culture this year. Like Jeff Blashill being hired as the Blackhawks head coach, the staff is completely different. There's a bunch of young guys inside the locker room, where in Connor's first couple years it was a lot of veterans that were kind of there to fill stopgap roles for the young guys to come. And so now he has all these young players that he can kind of bond with. And so I think I've seen off the ice not just him maturing as a leader, because he's always said and done all the right things off the ice, and even, speaking to the media, but you're just seeing him kind of show his personality a little bit more. And that's the one thing that has popped out to me, is he's just looks like he's enjoying himself more and having more fun playing hockey. Even though he does have a ton of fun playing hockey, I think he put a lot of pressure on himself in those first couple years. And now we're just seeing him, kind of let loose both on and off the ice.
I want to talk about the hiring of Jeff Blashill and how he's been so far year one here with the Blackhawks. But one of the things when I talked to him before the season, he talked about just overall being able to generate some offense, and how Connor Bedard, right, plays a huge role in that. How have you seen Bedard specifically help this team get some offense? I think the last game he broke Chicago's 11-game power play scoring drop, and I think he was mic'd up too, and he was
He
super hyped
was.
because he even said he was like, finally.
Yeah. Connor Bedard, prior to the shoulder injury that he suffered on December 12th, he had factored in on like 48% of Chicago's goals on the season. So either scoring or assist. And I think that was second in the entire NHL, or it might have been third. Like Connor McDavid and Macklin Celebrini were like one and two. And then it was Connor Bedard. I mean, think about that. Like when he goes down with an injury, 50% of your offense is gone. So I mean, he was really contributing in all facets. And if you dig into some of those numbers, a majority of those assists were primary assists. Like he wasn't backdooring his way to secondary assists where he just happened to be on the ice. Like he was driving play. And so we think of Connor Bedard as this offensive playmaker, a great shot, right? Elite shot, one of the best in the entire NHL. But the strides that I've seen him take personally is how committed he is to playing. Jeff Blashill calls it winning hockey, where he is committed to back checking and laying out for a blocked shot and playing defensively, so that way he can get the puck on his stick more often and he can drive offense more. Not that he wasn't doing that in his first 2 years, but sometimes when you're so good like Connor Bedard, and in the leagues that you play in prior, like in juniors, you could just get away with being an incredible offensive player just because you have the puck on your stick like 70% of the game. In the NHL, it's much harder. And so I think Jeff Blashill has taught that in Connor Bedard. I believe they got together over the summer in Vancouver and they were watching some of Sidney Crosby's shifts. And I think Connor Bedard, that's his childhood idol, it took that to heart and was like, okay, I want to start playing that brand of hockey. And we're seeing it translate to his game right now.
When you watch this team right now, one of the positives, one of the things that they're so good at is the penalty kill. How have they been so dominant so far this season?
It has been an incredible bright spot for the Blackhawks. And from start to finish, like sometimes on the special teams, you go through waves of, you kill off 20 in a row and then you give up 5 power play goals in a stretch of, 15 opportunities, right? Or you just go through like hot and cold stretches. For the Hawks, they've been so consistent all season long. First thing I'll say, they're getting great goaltending from Spencer Knight. But beyond that, their structure and their aggressiveness in the penalty kill has just been absolutely fantastic. And what's impressed me the most about it is they've dealt with a lot of turnover on the penalty kill roster where they have been dealing with injuries. Like Jason Dickinson has been in and out of the lineup battling some injuries more towards the beginning of the season. Ilya Mikheyev missed a few games. He's been by far the Blackhawks' best penalty killer. Frank Nazar missed a month because of that jaw injury, and he's an important part of the penalty kill. Tara Vinen has missed like 7 or 8 games this year because of an injury. He's also part of the penalty kill. And all these injuries are happening. And it's like the Hawks aren't skipping a beat on the penalty kill. So that has been, if there's one area that has been the most consistent for Chicago all season long, it is definitely the penalty kill.
I know Ilya Mikheyev. I mean, he seems like he's like the best at it in the NHL. And obviously, I think when you have the mix of like the veterans, right, and just they've been doing it all season long, so there's comfortability there. But how is he able to be so so good at it?
He's just a relentless. He has a relentless mentality where I think Jeff Blashill earlier in the season called him like a dog on a bone. Like that's really what it is. Like every time he sees a penalty kill opportunity or a loose puck, like he's darting for that loose puck. And that's a guy too that understands who he is as a player and what his role is, and he's not trying to be anyone differently. I think earlier in his career, he was viewed upon to be more of a top six player. But as his career has evolved and as he's gotten to Chicago, the Blackhawks have realized that he's a really good third line shutdown winger, and they can put him on the first penalty kill unit. And he has been, Connor Bedard said the other day, like, I think he's the best penalty killer in the entire NHL. And it's honestly hard to disagree.
Let's talk about Jeff Blashill because one of the reasons why he was hired here, right, was this whole thing about him being really good at developing young talent. And when you hear him speak, and even when I talked to him beginning of the season, he talked a lot about the importance of confidence, and especially for some of these young guys to and even like ride the momentum to throughout the season. What is your take on how he's done so far, year one here as the Blackhawks head coach?
He has really changed the feel and the atmosphere around the Blackhawks for over the last couple years. And I don't want this to come across as disrespectful to the coaches that were here prior, but the last two head coaches for the Blackhawks, the last two permanent head coaches for the Blackhawks, didn't have any head coaching experience at the NHL level. So it took a little bit of time for the guys to maybe respond, or kind of maybe there's a little bit reluctance at first. But with Jeff Blashill, when he stepped inside the Blackhawks locker room, there was like an instant credibility because he's essentially been a head coach at like every level: college, the USHL, the NHL. He's been an assistant coach in the NHL. He's coached Team USA at international levels. And then he spent the last 3 seasons as an assistant under John Cooper in Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay right now is like the model franchise as far as consistency over the last decade in the NHL. And so when he stepped in the locker room and assembled the staff, the Blackhawks inside that locker room were like glued in on what his message was. And I know it doesn't look like it's having a similar Ben Johnson type impact with the Bears, where he takes them from, non-playoff team to immediate potential Super Bowl contenders. But I think Jeff Blashill has made just as big of an imprint on molding the new culture. And it might not reflect it in the standings, but my goodness, I have so many positive things to say about the impact that Jeff Blashill has had on this Blackhawks roster. And I think I think Chicago fans should be excited about what he's going to bring to the table in the foreseeable future.
Talk to me about just on the ice scheme wise, like what else has he really brought to this Blackhawks team this season?
Yeah, specifically, he changed up the neutral zone. So the Hawks try to do like a 1-1-3, which I don't want to bog down with too many nitty-gritty details, but it essentially allows the opposition. One, the Hawks are still a little bit aggressive in the neutral zone, but having 3 defensemen or 3 players kind of lined up on the blue line makes it harder for the opposition to get into the offensive zone and forces them into like having to dump the puck in. And so I think the Hawks want to make sure that they're not being a rush team where teams can kind of just fly through them in the neutral zone. And so the Hawks have been really aggressive in that department. And I think it shows, talking about the penalty kill too, in the defensive zone, the Blackhawks are really good at kind of anchoring each side. And sometimes in the past, the Hawks ran more of a man-on-man system, and it was kind of got a little scrambly, but it feels like Jeff Blashill has instituted more of a hybrid type zone coverage where there aren't a lot of interchanging happening in the defensive zone. Like guys know where their spots are, and so I've seen a big improvement in that area.
How have you seen him give confidence and just instill that kind of confidence to some of these younger players?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Jeff Blashill in that regard is I see like on the ice for practices, like he is not afraid to ream guys out and to hold them accountable and to scream at them and not in a demeaning way, but holding them to a high standard. But then off the ice, he just seems like very personable, right? And he seems like he has an open door policy where any player can just walk into his coach's office and they can have a discussion. And so that's been really cool to watch how his personality off camera and off the ice is, kind of more of like a fatherly figure. But then on the ice, he's like, we're holding ourselves to a high standard, and he's not going to be afraid to call guys out. Again, not calling them out in a demeaning way, but calling them out saying like, hey, we need to hold ourselves to a high standard. And it's been cool to watch because it's been a while since we've seen that here with the Blackhawks coaching staff.
Thing too, when you look at this group, right, you do have a lot of young guys, and it's a good reason as to why they are so close because they're around the same age in a sense. But at Blashill, I feel like strikes a good balance of being tough because these guys they do want to be coach hard because they do want to be held accountable, they do want to win, but at the same time too, off the ice, I think that's a good balance there. Okay, so we are about a month away from the NHL trade deadline, I believe March 6th. What are some pieces that the Blackhawks can add, and are you going to expect them to make any moves here?
Yeah. Two guys I think jump out to me right away that I think are more likely to get moved than not are Jason Dickinson and Connor Murphy. Dickinson's a pending unrestricted free agent. He's been a terrific third line center for the Blackhawks here in Chicago over the last couple years. And it's been a tough year for him because he's been in and out of the lineup. But anytime he is healthy and performing at the level that Jason Dickinson expects of himself, he's just been such a dependable third line center. But because the Hawks have young players graduating to the NHL level, like Ryan Green has been here, Oliver Moore, I think the Hawks want to see maybe what those young guys can do in that third line spot. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Dickinson is moved. And then Connor Murphy on the back end, I think he's the second longest tenured athlete in Chicago sports right now. And he's been here so long that he has played more regular season games in a Blackhawks sweater than Marian Hossa and Jeremy Roenick. Like that's how long he's been here. And we kind of forget about it because there hasn't been much winning during his tenure. But if he is moved, I think one, the whatever that team is or whoever that team is, they're getting a really dependable depth defenseman that is physical and is just a terrific leader off the ice. And for Chicago, I think they have a lot of young guys that are coming up in the pipeline that they want to make sure that they're opening up spots for. And so I'd expect Dickinson and Murphy as the two most likely candidates to be moved. Ilya Mikheyev is also an unrestricted free agent. I would not be surprised if the Hawks explore more of a contract extension with him than trying to trade him. I imagine they're going to field a lot of calls from him. But if I'm Kyle Davidson, I'm hanging up because I'm looking to extend Ilya Mikheyev. And then really the last name is Nick Foligno. He's been the Blackhawks captain. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. If this is potentially his last year in the NHL, maybe there's a conversation between him and the team on whether or not he wants just one final crack at trying to win a Stanley Cup, which he has not done in his NHL career, or maybe he elects to try to see this season through, then reevaluates his situation at the end of the year. But those are the names that I'm watching for Chicago ahead of the trade deadline.
How much are you looking forward to this Olympic break here? I believe it goes until the 25th. And for the Blackhawks, I mean, a lot of them are going to be on break here. I think Blashill said too, it's going to be kind of like another mini camp for them as well.
Yeah, I am pumped for the Olympics because if it's going to resemble what the Four Nations tournament was. Now, I know there's no
Yep.
fighting in the Olympics, so we're probably not going to see three line brawls right out of the gate, like we saw in the USA Canada game in their first meeting. But I do expect it to be physical, intense. First time NHL players are participating in more than a decade. And if that Four Nations is it was just a glimpse of what we're going to get at the Olympics, boy, sign me up. And yeah, like post Olympic break for the Blackhawks, they only have one representative as of now, Teuvo Teravainen, as the player. Anders Sorensen is the assistant head coach. He's going to be on Team Sweden's coaching staff. But yeah, when the Hawks come back from their break, I mean, it really is going to be like a mini training camp again as they ramp up for the stretch run of their season.
Charlie, thanks so much for your time. And again, we've been trying to get this in the books for so long. I'm so happy it worked out today.
I wish the viewers can see our text threads that's been happening for like
I
the
know,
last month or so because
I
every time we
know.
we try to line it up, something else pops up. So I'm glad we were able to do it, and I look forward to doing it again down the road.
Sure. Thanks, Charlie.